Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. First item on our agenda this evening, gentlemen, is review and approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If there's any additions or corrections, if you'd be kind enough to give them to Linda. Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve as written.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved minutes. Next item, first of many public hearings on the Casel Edition final plat. Any additional comments at this stage in the game, or?
You know, just specifically the July staff planning review kind of lays out the things that could be included in the resolution approving the final plat, and those are in your packet.
Thank you. With that said, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on the Casel Edition final plat. If you have any thoughts you would like to share with the board, by all means, come up to the podium. If you would be kind enough to give Linda your name and your address before you begin, please.
Hi, my name is David Martin. I'm with Massey Land Surveying. One thing I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, so it doesn't create any havoc, is that since we submitted the preliminary plat and received approval on that, we had since gotten a request to further subdivide a lot, and we actually missed an outlot, which was an oversight on our part. The outlot that was further split was outlot C, and the outlot that was missed is just east of outlot O. And I'm bringing it to everybody's attention because the way the final plat was done is we put an outlot T between outlot C and D, and when we go to record this, the county's going to want the outlots in sequential sequence, and that could in turn mess up the outlots designated on the resolution. So
David.
the lot areas haven't changed between
Right,
RS
right,
and T. It's
right.
just
So QRS would become RST pretty much. These would become RS and T.
I believe so.
Okay.
There's a couple different ways we could relabel it. We thought about calling this A, B, C, D, and going up that way, but
Okay.
like I said, I don't want to create any havoc. It's just an oversight. I want to
Okay.
bring it to everybody's attention now.
Okay. Okay.
So this is the one further split.
Right.
It was
I
never
understand
T
that
there,
one,
and
right.
that one was never split.
Okay. Okay.
that's all I really wanted to.
Okay, I
Yeah.
think, we'll work that out before a resolution goes to council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Toki Poplar, and I live in the Casel area. I have a triangle piece of it at the end. I have spoken with several of my neighbors as well as Ron, and I have done some research as well myself, and I'm finding it difficult to believe that you have spoken to the state of Minnesota in regards to the legality of creating these plots that are landlocked that would create the need for him to purchase an easement in order to show them or sell them. There's also utilities running through them, which means that you cannot develop, put up a fence, or access them because you would interfere with the city's need to access that. You also cannot do anything within 10 feet of the stream that is back there. So can someone answer some of those questions as to, have you spoken to the state of Minnesota? Have you gotten their okay to create this in the first place in order to finalize it? And what has been the communication back and forth in regards to this? Because you can plot it out and do those things, but you're wasting your time and your money. Because I know myself and several of my neighbors feel it's unnecessary to do so because we can't develop that land anyway. And yet, some of us are maintaining it and taking care of it. So, can anyone help me out with that information, please?
Forgive me, you're looking for a legal opinion from the Planning and Zoning Board?
I would like to know what the state of Minnesota has said in regards to creating these plots for sale that no one can do anything with. And they're landlocked, and I have read over several legal cases that have gone to court in regards to this, where you have a landlocked piece of land. The only people that are actually eligible to purchase that land are the landowners that are on the other side. So the problem with that is, if he were to sell my portion, or my portion, that triangle that is adjacent to my property, he would have to purchase an easement through my property in order to get to it, which we're not going to allow, and I know my neighbors aren't going to allow that either. So what has the state said to you guys in regards to the legality of creating these, and with the city's need to access it and the stream and that sort of stuff?
I don't think the idea was you weren't going to sell it to somebody else, you were going to offer it to the adjacent landowners, correct?
Correct.
And it wouldn't go up for sale to some outsider when they couldn't get to it.
That's the intention.
Well, that might be the intention. However, I will tell you, I used to own the largest women's expo in Minnesota. I sold it in January. I am currently a certified therapeutic coach and a mediator with the state of Minnesota Supreme Court. So, I will tell you that what I know to be true is, once something is for sale, anyone can buy it.
Yes.
So even if the intent is to sell it to the person who's adjacent, that doesn't mean we want to buy it.
Right. I have woodlots out in the country,
Mhm.
and they're small enough where the other landowners don't have to give me access to it. I
Mhm.
still own them, but they don't have to give me access to them if they don't want to.
Right.
That was my own choice to have them.
Right.
They were my father's, but I don't need to get to them. Just like if he did happen to sell some property to somebody behind you, doesn't mean he has to give them access to it.
How does that make sense?
That's why I'm saying,
I mean, that's just-
nobody's going to buy the property if they can't get access to it.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is, even, like, okay, so the interest, where's the interest? So when I'm working with a couple who can't agree on parenting time, which happens, that's pretty much what I handle. What's the interest? To make money on this very small piece of land that we're already maintaining and taking care of.
But that's your choice.
That is our choice.
Right.
But the issue here is we can't develop it, we
No.
can't do anything on it, we can't put anything on it,
No.
and we haven't, and yet we're maintaining. So what's the interest? To make money. Are you gonna make money? No, because nobody wants to buy it. You guys have wasted an enormous amount of time and resources going through this process. Wouldn't you agree?
No.
No.
You would not. How, so because he's moved the trail over to the railroad,
That isn't the intent of this, though. The intent was to give the homeowners who lived there
uh-huh,
additional property that they could go and build a campsite, or nothing permanent, but just have some more access room to do what they wanted to do with it.
we
If they're not
can't-
building, you can't build on it.
You can't do anything on it.
But you can have a campsite, you can mow it, put your lawn chairs out there.
You actually,
grill.
Ron told me when he came to my home, in the backyard, and this is his words, you shouldn't be mowing up by that stream. You can't do anything within 10 feet of it. 10 feet from that stream up to there is the city, where the city is running, and you're welcome to come to my house. It's 1004 3rd Street Northeast. I am Lot 2, Block 7. So, I'm not sure if he added me onto that or not, but I know that I speak for my neighbors as well, in that their lots back there that are going to be for sale are wooded. Heavily, densely wooded. Mine is not, because the previous homeowners did something with it. We purchased our home in November. So, within 10 feet of that stream, we are actually not supposed to mow.
Mhm.
And the previous homeowners did.
Mhm.
But the people down the way have not. So they cannot camp on it, they cannot put anything on it. All of those things that are advantages to purchasing that property are not advantages. and it's a floodplain. So that would increase my insurance if I purchased that lot because of the stream.
I don't think he's forcing you to buy anything.
No, and I'm not saying he's forcing me to buy anything. I'm saying that the state of Minnesota, my neighbor has spoken with them, and she's also in the contracting business and division of, you've heard from her. And there are laws and rules in regards to this, and it's my belief that this has not been consulted with the state of Minnesota. Unless I'm wrong, do any of you guys have other words that you've gotten this whole thing approved with the resources and land development in Minnesota? Because there could be a lot of trouble, not necessarily trouble, but all of this would be undone. I know they've been called and contacted about 6 weeks ago, not by me, but by other people. So this has to be run past them before it can be approved. Otherwise, there's going to be issues.
No, I don't think so.
It does.
Actually, our city attorney has advised us otherwise.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay.
I've heard that.
Alright.
Okay, well, that's my 2 pieces on that, my 2 cents. I would encourage you guys to do some more of your own research on this and before you finalize anything, because I feel that the nice neighbor guy thing is a ruse, because that's what I was told. I'm just being a nice neighbor and offering you more land. Well, we can't do anything with it. We don't want it. We're taking care of it. I mean, the city has access to it. You're not supposed to do anything with it, so what's the point? What's the
If I
action
recall, there's also a liability protection with this.
in regards to what?
It's his land, and if something, say you were mowing
Mhm.
something that you shouldn't be mowing,
Right.
and you happen to get hurt mowing, it's on his land, he's liable for it.
Yes, that's right. And also, after a certain amount of years, you can claim eminent domain after you've lived there for a certain time if you have been caretaking for a piece of land.
I think we went down that road, and I don't
Yeah.
think that's quite true.
Yeah, it's not
Well,
eminent domain,
I-
it's called squatter's rights.
Well, yes, yes. So it takes a certain amount of time in order to qualify for that. I personally don't qualify for that because we just purchased the home. But I know there might be others that do. So, I know what you're saying.
And I think there's a difference between lot of record and an outlot, difference in definition. These are all outlots.
You still have to have access.
Not necessarily.
Okay. Well, that's my 2 cents on it. I think that this is kind of a waste of time, to be honest. I understand that there's intent and that you guys are getting a trade-off of moving the path somewhere else. But I do know that, you know, Ron, we're not interested in buying our triangle at this time. So that's it. Have you guys heard from the state of Minnesota on this at all, other than what your attorney has stated?
We take our city attorneys that we're paying them
Mm.
for to provide us legal advice, and we're taking that into consideration.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thanks.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to contribute? If not, I will go ahead and close the public
Can I
hearing.
ask a quick question on the outlot?
Please, if you would come up to the podium.
Sure. It's not a big deal, it's just the recent letter that we got from the city about keeping lots mowed in the ordinance. So on an outlot, if we were to purchase it and decided we wanted to let it grow or whatever, does that lot have to be maintained, or can we do whatever?
No, because it's an outlaw.
Outlot,
Well,
yeah.
it wasn't really specific, it called
Floodplain.
like buildable, or, I don't have the letter with me, so I don't know the exact wording, I'm just reading the maintenance on lots and paths for mowing, or, you know.
And
you
I
know,
can only speak on my experience, in the subdivision I live, there was a platted outlot, and it was, to be served as a water reservoir space. And so, the city actually took that on as an outlot and maintained it temporarily, but, you know, prairie grasses and
Ones
things
and something
are
like
allowed
that.
to grow within that. And that's my anecdotal experience. Beyond that, no, I'd have to refer to somebody else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff Haskey, 908 Third Street Northeast. So when I asked the question originally, a couple meetings ago, you said that it was zoned residential. So now that you're subdividing it as an outlot, does that change its zoning?
No, the zoning does not change.
So
at
if
this
it's a
time.
residential lot, right, zoned residential, wouldn't it have to be maintained as a residential lot?
Well, they're being recorded as outlot, not residential.
And I think it's in a floodplain, that has something to do with it too.
Okay, there's a lot of, I think, and previous experience, these are a lot of questions that we have that we've never really had answered. And we're just looking for answers.
Right.
Very first meeting, we tabled it because there's a lot of questions for Ron, and not towards the council. And so when questions have come towards the council, we haven't really gotten any answers. It's been tabled, went to the next meeting. It seemed like, as a council, you just were listening and then just approved it because you got bored with it. You're just gonna make the choice and not listen to the people that have been questioning, you know, the whole purpose of this. And, you know, it just seems like, I mean, there's been four-wheelers ripping up and down the last couple of days in the outlots, and kind of, it's very loud, the other thing. And so, like, zoning and all these questions come up, but we never get any answers. It gets tabled or goes somewhere else. You know, what the city attorney has advised, I've read through some packets, I don't see any of that. I don't see any clarity. And that's all we're asking for is clarity. You know, you pass it off on, oh, well, it's on a floodplain. Well, some of the land isn't on a floodplain, so what about the land that's not on a floodplain, zoned residential as an outlot? Where is this all in, you know, where can we find more information to educate ourselves if we choose to purchase the property? I think that's the thing we just want to know. It's just very, very unclear at this time. And then, you know, who do we, you know, as concerned citizens, you know, we talk about that 10-foot zone, or, you know, we think that there's a 10-foot variance to the river, you know. Do we ask the DNR to come in and check on it to make sure everything's going the way that it's supposed to be, things are all up to fine, which I'm sure, you know, Ron spent some time talking with probably attorneys and the surveyors and making sure everything's up to snuff, but, you know, I want to believe it when I see it. I want to see the proof versus, you know, I think and I don't know, right? I think and I know for sure, or relaying it to a previous experience that you have in one lot, and that doesn't apply to this situation. So, you know, we just want to make sure it's done right, it's done accurately, and it's all smoothed over. I took a look at the proposal, and you know, it's very, very vague in what's in there. You know, I'd feel very much more comfortable if within the resolution it talks about that only the adjacent property adjacent property owner could purchase it. And the other thing is that with this is that Ron's been doing all the talking, but the property owner is John. And so I don't know, because again, I looked at the final plat and it has John's name there, and I don't know if you know, it's all going to be signed by a John Casel versus Ron. I don't think that's a misprint, you know, but this whole time, you know, Ron's been talking. But where's John? What's his plans for this? Not Ron's, because he's the developer or a part of Casel Development or something like that. But all the time it's been presented by Ron and not John's. I just 2 + 2 is not equaling 4. Things aren't adding up here for us as adjacent property owners to these sublots. So that's the biggest thing, is that we just want clarity. And I don't think there's a lot of clarity. None of our questions have been truly answered, and I don't think that we should rush through this right away just to make it go away. I think we should have the questions that we have, you know, written down, tabled, and answered, and I think we'd feel a lot better about it in the end. If it gets approved, whether we're for it or against it, but at least we would have our answers. You know, a lot of people come here, in one of the very first meetings, a lot of people came here because they were concerned and didn't know what was going on. And we still kinda don't know what's going on, and that there's a misprint. I'd like for this to be all smoothed over and to go over well and get approved, as long as all of our questions are answered, and we don't have all our questions answered. So, you know, that's my 2 cents. My question is, you know, can we get our questions answered before this gets approved? Because once it's approved, it doesn't matter what the answer is anymore. But I think, you know, we should have our answers before it becomes approved, especially with the mowing and the zoning and making sure the outlots, you know, they missed a lot, so make sure that's in there. Put it back around and make sure that's right. Thank you.
Please.
Ron Kazel, 912 3rd Street Northeast. You're right, I am kind of the one in charge here. There is a reason for that. The main reason for that is I bought this 11.5 acres from Carter Blaine. I've got 17 people that are utilizing my property. I've got some assets that I don't want to lose. So I put this property in my son's name. My son's name is Jonathan Kazel. So Jonathan will have to sign any deeds over to anybody who's interested in buying it. I do own the property on the back side. If someone were to buy that property, not combine it with their home and sell their home, and they still want to have access, I'll give them in writing or I'll work with you. So they will not be landlocked, because I'm not landlocked, and I'm not going to let anybody get landlocked. So if somebody buys it, they're not going to get stuck. I may even buy it back from somebody who sells their house and doesn't sell that lot. The main purpose in doing this is either you're going to own your backyard that you want to play on, or you're going to have to respect the property line. I'm doing this all for you. If you don't want that big of a backyard, that's fine. I'm not forcing anyone to buy anything. But I am going to get myself out of a liability situation, because right now I've got all these people that are swelling back onto this, and I can't stay like that. I didn't buy this property to make your backyards better or bigger for you. I bought it for what's on the other side of the creek. And the four-wheelers with the loud mufflers, the race pipes, the fast tires, those people got in trouble.
Okay.
They're not anybody that was supposed to be back there. They were from the other side of town.
Motorcycle that goes back and forth in our backyard.
Derek is not supposed to be out there. He's been talked
Been
to.
there every week, and he was there Saturday for an hour and a half. My wife said, we're putting the house up for sale, if this is what this is turning
He's
into.
got a lot of problems going on in life, along with his drinking. I haven't had him arrested yet,
Snowmobiles
but
at
I have to.
11:30 at night, too.
So I'm trying to address everything that's going on. As far as the mowing, from what I understand on outlots, if we're gonna mow that outlot, I had to mow the whole 11.5 acres, all the way back to the railroad track, including the bike trail. That's not feasible. It is deemed as a responsible landowner that you take care of thistles and giant ragweed and, you know, hazardous weeds like that can take over and, you know, be a problem. Prairie grass, things like that, would not be required. Outlots that are not purchased are not going to be mowed. They're going to be let grow to a reasonable grass. And that's where the property lines are going to be, and that's where they're going to be respected. And what happens with that lot is really up to me at that point. If I decide I want to mow it, I'll mow it. If I don't, I don't. So I hope I answered the 4 or 5 things that were talked about here. If there's anything else, I'll be happy to try to address it. But ultimately, this is about the liability and respecting whose lot line it is. As far as caretaker's rights is a 15-year non-agreement with an owner who doesn't care for you taking care of it, and you can swoop in and just take their land. Once the sale of the property is done, 15 years starts over. I've already talked to every one of you, and we've discussed if you wanna take care of that until the purchase happens. So the clock is not even running on the 15 years right now, legally. So, I don't know if there's any other clearer way that I can explain any of these things, but I'm trying to give you guys a bigger backyard. If you don't want it, that's fine. I'm not forcing you to take anything. We're not outside of anything that we're not legally can do or cannot do. So, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
I have something else to say to Ron. As far as like mowing back there, you don't have access to that land unless you come through my neighbor's woods. You're gonna push a mower through my neighbor's woods to mow a triangle that's literally from like that corner to that wall?
I still own a strip on the north side of the creek all the way behind the outlots, because there's another outlot behind the outlots that are behind your house. 2 more outlots.
You can't get through though. It's all weeded, it's all brush. There's no way for you to get there.
I can't-
So, well, right, okay, you can if you want to. That's gonna take you a lot of resources. Kind of, this is like an unreasonable conversation. It doesn't make sense. Which is what I was trying to say. This doesn't make sense. At all. At all. I mean, honestly, it's a way, I know that the other, like I have a rectangle that I don't own. He owns half of it. The other part is owned by the original landowner, I believe. What's the other guy's name?
Carter Blaine.
Carter Blaine owns the other triangle in my backyard. And that's it. I mean,
We're talking about the very east lot.
Yeah.
It's the very east one, way down here.
right. And everybody to the right is wooded or marshland or, you know, whatever. So it just doesn't make sense at all. And the questions, like that gentleman said there, I would like to know and hear from the attorney, the city attorney, if we can table this and get some questions answered, maybe invite the attorney to be here at the next meeting. What have they heard from the state of Minnesota? Has this been approved by the state of Minnesota?
So, both the, preliminary plat approval
Mhm.
and, the staff recommendation for the final plat approval,
Mhm.
Both reference the city attorney's review prior to, a decision being made by the city council. So the city attorney is aware of the proceedings. She reviewed the comments and the plat prior to the preliminary plat approval.
And did
we're-
she get approval from the state?
This is happening under city ordinance.
Right.
And city ordinance, takes its, form from state statute.
Right, and it's my understanding that there's, it's not meshing with the state statutes.
Well,
So
the
I
city
can review
attorney
it
is
later.
reviewing, so the staff recommendation on the final plat is for the city attorney to review the final plat, the trail easement, the deed restrictions, and the first right of refusal prior to recording. So the city attorney will review those.
Right, right.
Okay.
I would also encourage you guys, because I know like when I'm working with clients, I'll often have them try to stick to the facts and take the emotion out of it, because this can be quite emotional. So, I've heard Ron say, I would agree to not sell to anybody else, and I would do this, and I would do that. Those are a lot of promises. But how can any one of you or me actually uphold those promises? It is one person's word because they're looking for the approval of the council. Right? There's no way to get any of those promises in writing.
Well, the things that we are getting in writing are
Mhm.
also spelled out in the staff planning review.
Right.
That was provided, so, we'll record a trail easement with the final plat. The final plat will reference, the recorded document. The final plat will reference the parkland dedication of Outlot R. The city of Castle will have the first right of refusal for the outlots to be renamed, currently QNS. recorded with the final plat, and the deed restrictions to be recorded include no permanent foundations or structures shall be constructed. Permitted accessory structures outside of the 100-year floodplain shall conform to applicable city ordinances. No additional fencing shall be placed within the 100-year floodplain. The extraction and/or storage of soils and other material is prohibited within the floodplain, and no motorized vehicles, trash, hazardous materials, nor scrap metal shall be stored or disposed of within the floodplain. So those deed restrictions will be recorded with the outlaw.
Right, but
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
And I heard promises from Ron about I would sell only to you guys, and I would make sure this happens and that happens, and access this and access that. How can you add those into there?
We actually, there's no way that we can infringe upon his personal property, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
Okay.
You're right, I agree with you.
Okay.
I completely agree.
Okay.
So I would honestly love some answers from the attorney about what the state is saying in regards to this, and how the ordinances, like you said, are in coordination or congruent with what the state has written as statutes for this type of an outlaw, with easements and all of those things, and have that recorded as well. Because the stuff I've read and the cases I've read where these things have happened, Marty Law has a really good one out there. It causes a problem, not just for the city, but for the people that have these outlaws now in their backyards.
It's not changing owner. That land will still belong to the person that it belongs to now.
Right, unless it is sold to someone else. You can't guarantee that somebody else isn't gonna buy that land, or that he will buy
Right.
it back, or any of those
Right.
types of things.
I think
Those
you
are
could
all
know.
just,
Yeah, I believe you could
cotton
know.
candy.
Yeah.
You know, it's fluff.
Okay.
It's not a fact. You can't lean on it, you can't rely on it. It's great promises and it's great intent, but it's nothing that can be recorded because it would infringe upon his legal rights.
Exactly.
So I completely agree with you.
Okay.
Any other comments? I will go ahead and close the public hearing. What would the thoughts be of our current city council
I don't think they're here, are they? I think it's management.
No, I'm pretty sure our city council members are sitting.
I think in the previous meetings, we have gone through this fairly thoroughly. We've looked at our city ordinance. I think our staff has done a great job in talking with our city attorney. I think that, myself, I think it's, we've got it pretty well ironed out. I don't quite understand what the question was out there. I do believe that some people may and may not buy them. Some people may buy 3, one on each side, plus the one behind them. We don't have the right to say who's gonna purchase them. So, I think we've covered it fairly well, thoroughly.
Yeah, I've heard everything that everybody has raised, and I would say 99% of what's raised tonight is outside of our purview as a planning commission. We're looking at a property owner wanted to subdivide his property into outlots, and based on the information that we've received up to date, we're in compliance. And I understand the nuisance issue, but that's an enforcement, that's a police department, that's not a planning and zoning issue. And also we can't stipulate sale as part of this, so from my perspective as a commissioner on the planning and zoning, I think all the questions have been answered, and I'm ready to move forward with this.
In terms of your review, Melanie, from this step forward, what involvement do you have or don't have after this meeting?
What involvement do I have or not have?
As the city attorney?
Yeah. That is, if the council asks for any further advice or counsel with regard to, the issue, then I would be consulted about that. I will, review the language of the deed restrictions and the bike path easement and those documents. But aside from that, I wouldn't have any further involvement.
Thank you. Any more comments, gentlemen? Gentlemen?
I agree with what Corey's talking about. I think we went over it with the city engineer's been very thorough in his end. Once again, too, it's, Ron has purchased this property. He's given everybody the option to purchase that piece, which could aid in the fact of the motorcycle and the snowmobiles, because now the homeowners, if they so choose to buy this property, will be able to control it that way. If they don't want somebody on there, they can restrict that. That's in their right then. It would be their property. As far as him working out the deal with everybody, that would be a great plan, if they so choose to. But it is Ron's property. I guess it kinda comes down to that. He's offered it to everyone that lives there. If they so choose to buy it, then things, I think, will work out for them.
I agree. I think Ron has come through with everything we have asked him to do. Anything above and beyond that is beyond our capabilities. That's something that's between the current owner and the proposed owner. I don't think we can lay judgment or make suggestions in that department. He's fulfilled everything he was asked to fulfill, as far as we're concerned.
I can't argue. With that said, I would be looking for a motion.
And, please include in the motion the, staff suggestions for the, final resolution.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve the final plat with the stipulations that, and the staff planning review, and contingent on the appropriate lettering
Thank
of
you.
all the outlots and city attorney review.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing, Home Federal Savings Bank Amendment to Final Plat.
So this area has a conditional use permit for a planned unit development. So in essence, the idea of variances has already been covered under the planned unit development. And as staff understands this, in consultation with the city attorney, this will be an amendment to the final plan. So the existing conditional use permit for the PUD is not being affected at all. It stays in place. And then I think we had a few comments for you on this one because unless you know, have a question for me, it seemed like it was pretty straightforward.
With that said, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing specific to the Home Federal Savings Bank amendment to the final plat. If anybody has any comments they'd like to share, same as before, if you come to the podium, give Lenny your name and address, please. If not, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Gentlemen, any thoughts?
Well, are we doing, is there an addition that's going, you guys would like to do an addition on there, that's why I'm reading this?
Yeah, a 25-foot by 26-foot addition onto the existing structure.
And what is the addition being built for? Are we adding more staff, or?
Be for the, Matt Bradford, the market president for the Casson branch, live in Casson. It's be for the expansion and modernization of the tribal facility.
Okay. We are zone C2 there, is that what I saw? Yep. Since we're increasing the building size, has everybody gone back and looked at the lot size for parking that's required?
Yeah, we need 10 spaces and we're short 1.
But this was approved as a planned unit development under a conditional use permit, so that essentially takes the variance issues out of the equation. They don't need a variance for parking, they don't need a variance for setback.
Right, but they still have a parking space. I'm just saying, if you take and put a building on 100% of the property, you have no parking space, they can't do that either.
Correct.
So you gotta meet the criteria regardless.
And we're showing 9 spaces, and they've had correspondence with Daniels in regards to utilizing a few of their parking spaces.
Can't utilize other people's parking spots.
Well, we can if they're up to 300 feet, it can be off the lot, as per the parking section.
I'd have to look at that again, but I don't, that is if you own the property and it's within 300 feet, you can utilize that. I believe that's what Mayo Clinic is. They can utilize the lot across the street and behind the clinic, because that's within that 300 feet, that they own it.
So we can't have an agreement with Daniels to
No.
lease parking from them?
Well,
That's
so
part
the
of the
entire
PUD,
thing
right?
is, right,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
PUD is both properties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's both owners.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But I don't know that a PUD will extend parking spaces unless you actually own that property.
To me,
Not saying I don't want you to do it, I just don't wanna, you know, make sure that we got everything crossed, because we have people that do diligence and do research, you know, so I don't want to do this again later, so.
I would
Right,
add
so
with
we're-
the, oh, excuse me.
Yeah, so this is not a change to the conditional use permit for the planned unit development. This is an amendment to the final plan.
And I would add, Coy, with the parking concern, banking is changing so rapidly that our lobby traffic's decreasing constantly, and most of the transactions are electronic, and I know that the 9 spots would
I've
more
never
than...
seen your lot full.
No, would more than service our needs for that facility.
And we have off-street parking as well for our staff.
But once again, can't count that. Not to, sorry, but,
Question on the PUD.
where's
Would
the
your
original
issue,
PUD?
would your...
It's in your packet, the
Would your
original.
concern, Coy, be alleviated if they were to get the other property owner to sign on to this app?
No. I mean, we're still dealing with the ordinance.
So the original, conditional use permit that was granted, in the finding of fact, number 4, does note that adequate utilities, parking, drainage, and other necessary facilities will be provided. So we're not changing the conditional use permit, we're amending their final plan.
Well, you're changing the conditional use permit, period.
No.
If you're
No.
if you're taking parking spaces away, you're changing, you're not providing adequate parking by the city ordinance.
But we're not opening up the conditional use permit.
Well, if you take away a parking space, you're not gonna be in compliant.
There was no specific number of parking
In the
spaces.
ordinance.
No,
It's
in the
specified.
conditional use permit.
It's specified in the ordinance when you put so many people in.
Yes, but they have a
It's no
conditional
different than any
use
other
permit
place that we've gone
for
through
a planned
and done
unit
this.
development in which the finding of fact states that adequate utilities, parking, drainage, and other necessary facilities will be provided.
For that
For this
building.
conditional use permit, for the, parcel of land known as Block 1 JH Casson Addition. So we're not opening up the conditional use permit. We're amending their final plan.
So the intent and purpose of the planned unit development according to our ordinances stage. Planned unit development provisions are intended to encourage more efficient use of land, public services, and greater amenity by allowing, under certain circumstances, which we've got outlined in the conditional use, a more flexible means of land development or redevelopment than is otherwise afforded through the strict enforcement of the zoning requirements of certain districts. So with this being a planned unit development, your argument about the zoning is, what do I want to say, doesn't come into play.
So we'll approve the amendment
I'd like
to
to
the final plan.
bring up the parking again. I'm looking at the zoning ordinance, and it doesn't say that it has to be our property. It just says, all off-street parking shall be within 300 feet of the lot where the principal use is located, measured from the nearest part of the off-street parking facility to the nearest point of the principal lot. It doesn't talk specifically about owner or anything about the lot.
No.
Plan.
Exactly, you're amending the final plan.
Right. Anything else we need to discuss, Kevin?
That's my understanding there.
Yeah.
Maybe that, when you're in a PUD, then essentially, while what's in the ordinance might inform the direction of how the PUD might be formed, it's not beholden to it. Allows that flexibility in that sort of way.
We did, just have 2 comments, the engineer to review the grading plan and MnDOT to review the, amended plan.
I'm curious, and, because they've already got
Right.
the egress out there.
Yeah.
So
But
that
just to
doesn't
review,
change.
you're right, they would just review it.
Okay.
There's one more discussion, I would be looking for a motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the amendment to the final plan.
With the included comments from the staff plan?
With the included comments from staff plan review.
motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion, second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Tyler Larson variance, public hearing.
So Tyler, has submitted a request for a variance, in order, to build the plan that he submitted. I also provided you, with a schematic showing that actually the home and garage, if aligned slightly differently, would fit, within the, required setback.
With that said, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing, same as before. If you have any comments you'd like to share, if you'd be kind enough to come up to the podium, give us your name and or address, please.
Mike Coble, Big Sky Builders, planning on building a house for Tyler Larson. We've had a conversation about this before. I didn't know if there's any more questions since you got a different layout here in front of you. Or do you want to go through is there any questions for me, I guess, from what we've discussed before? We also put the deck on there, so that'll be, taken care of right away, so we don't have an issue with that in the future. We'll do that with the building permit.
I don't have any questions. Thanks. Any other comments? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we briefly discussed this last, or
So this layout that we have here, that's the one that's proposed?
No,
No,
that,
this one.
that is showing that the home and the garage would fit within the setback.
Okay.
The way that they have proposed it, it does not fit within the setbacks, and that's why they're requiring a variance for this layout. But this house and garage would fit within the setback.
So there is an option where it could fit,
Yes.
With a detached garage?
No, it could be attached.
But you'd be entering the house on the wrong side, right?
Yeah, it's, and
Well,
also.
not from the front, from the side.
You'd
Right,
have to enter
right,
from the side.
Right.
Also, when we kinda had our previous conversation, when you do this, the way this is gonna look for the appearance, yes, you're right, it does fit in there like this, but from, appearance and looks and affordability and, I don't think it's,
Here's my view,
Yep.
okay? I had a house in northeast Casson. I wanted to add a third garage stall. I went to planning and zoning. I was told no, because it was inconsistent with the neighborhood. I didn't fight it, but I did come back and ask them if I could put a slab up. They were all for that. This house kind of reminds me of that same thing. Looking at all the houses that are up there now, if you try to force the garage off to the side or put in a smaller house, it's inconsistent with the neighborhood. And that's my thorn in my side of changing this. To have the house the way it is, move the setbacks back, it stays in conformance with the neighborhood. I realize it's not a great lot to have because it is angled.
Yep.
It's hard to put a house on there, but to keep it consistent with the neighborhood, I think it's, for me, it's a no-brainer. It would be a go.
That's correct. I mean, you are correct, it does fit, it just is not gonna look
It
proper
would
in
not
that
look
community.
consistent with the neighborhood.
questions? Close the public hearing. Yes, sir, I do. Yeah, I agree with what Lonnie has said. I think you virtually eliminate any usable yard with this configuration of any substance. We're going to be sitting right on top of the road with the 20-foot setback with both buildings, and we're going to be narrow between that and an adjoining property owner to the northwest.
Couriers,
Yeah.
and I spoke with them.
Yeah. So I agree that if we were to allow the variance on the rear setback, it meets the neighborhood, and it's the last lot in that area that's going to be built upon. So I'm more concerned about consistency of the aesthetics than I am concerned about meeting our setback requirements. As far as the argument goes, if he can't enjoy his yard like everybody else in that neighborhood, by going to this other configuration, to me that rules that out. I have nothing to add.
So I did include in your packet the findings of fact to go with the approval of the variance. It's the sample resolution. Starting with A, whether or not exceptional, unique, and extraordinary circumstances apply to physical surrounding shape or topographical condition of the parcel of land that results in practical difficulties for the owner.
Well, I think the unique of the lot meets A, granting the variance,
So that would be yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Grant the B, whether or not granting the variance will alter the essential character of the locality, keeping consistent with the submitted plan, stays within the character, so it's meeting that. We're not concerned about any safety or light or air impairment. So I don't think C applies. I think awarding the variance does mitigate the practical difficulties that would be inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. I don't think the comprehensive plan falls into play here, because it's still residential within the residential. And I think for F, I think in the unique circumstances, I don't think would be repeated.
Truth be told, I think the variance actually fits better in this application than in their instances where we've granted variances, because
What it does, and I don't know that this is anything that we could ever do, but when we're going through our planning processes, and we had some idea as to what the character is gonna look like, and determining what the minimal house that's gonna be built, and to see if it fits on each and every one of these lots.
But you know, that changes.
It does.
That we could have lots 10 years ago, that the houses now wouldn't be anything near what they were like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Teresa suggested that we need to address these tiny homes
Oh, that's the mayor, actually.
I know if you put a house that would fit on this lot, it would look strange up in that area. It would look way out of place.
I'm concerned within the staff planning review here, there's that line that says unlimited potential for future variance requests. Kinda jumped out at me.
And that's why I tossed in Houston's first subdivision. I mean, this was a subdivision that was just, approved, and it has 6 lots that potentially we could see folks in here saying, I can't put the house I want on that lot.
That's undeveloped.
Well, it's brand new, it's just, you're right, it's a brand new platted subdivision, but it opens up the potential.
That's one of variance, they're individual. That's what's gonna control that, you know,
Then we would have to.
We need to make sure.
We would have to restrict developers to only build certain shaped and sized lots.
Or,
To eliminate
or
that.
you could think about what your current setbacks are. You know, that, I think that's the other point that Dwayne's brought up, is the problem with what's in our ordinance.
Yep.
So that's another angle to think about, too. Because it is impossible to cookie cutter every single lot. Oh, there
Right.
we go.
From a personal perspective.
There we go.
So looking at the setbacks, they're like in a C or an R2 zone, it's 20 feet instead of 25. So I don't know if looking at other zones that are similar in nature, that their setbacks could inform what a proper variance request could be. I mean, variance is variance, and, you know, a lot of times when you see numbers are nice round numbers or somewhat arbitrary, because the line has to be drawn somewhere. So, I'm just kind of asking the question just to kind of get the thought process.
Well, and the process gives us the opportunity to review, and if we get a repeating theme, then that's when we start looking at the ordinances and make a decision as to whether our ordinance is current with today's standards or not.
If there's not any more comments or questions, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the variance request as submitted.
And that, Dwayne, the answers that I have, for the resolution are A, yes, B, no, C, 1 through 4, no.
Right.
D, yes, E, residential, and F, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, public hearing, Casey's Retail Company rezone.
So, Casey's has, executed offers to purchase properties south of the current Shopko location. And, this request is to rezone those from R2 to C2.
With that said, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. If you have some thoughts you would like to share, if you'd be kind enough to come to the podium and give Linda your name and address, please.
Why did they point at the former teacher?
Go ahead.
Well, let's see, at the risk of sounding old, which, you know, when I came in here, half the people with gray hair were my former students or ball players, so. I guess, 7 of the 8 lots.
Mr.
Phil,
Johnson,
I'm sorry,
sir.
Phil
Thank
Johnson,
you.
1602 15th Street.
Thank you.
7 of the, owners of 7 of the 8 lots have been tendered offers, which we've all accepted, and everybody thought it was a very fair offer. This has been, I would say, 3 or 4 years in the making. I think everything Casey's has presented us has been very fair, very straight up. Back to the old thing, I guess, through my coaching and teaching and building and developing in town, you get to know a lot of people, and lots of people lately have asked, when is this going to happen? Some of them have been here a long time, back to when that was a dirt road. When I came, that was a dirt road. There were 14 places in town to buy gas, which, that sounds crazy, but I know Lonnie could verify that. Not that he's old, he's just...
Thanks, Phil.
He came out wrong. You know the streets better than I do. It just seems like, you know, gosh, I've seen Casson grow, and I've been fortunate to build homes for many people, and it's kind of the only thing that hasn't grown in town. We have a very nice Quick Trip, which is across the road, as we all know. We have one other station in town, and I'm constantly asked, when is this going to happen? You know, I don't keep track of the numbers or anything like that, but I think everybody sees it as a very favorable addition to the city. Convenience, number one. You know, if you live on the north end, a lot of people come in with this 16th Street out there to come into the back way, which is out where I live out there, and they don't even come by this part of town. Many do, but a lot of folks are stopping in Byron or Rochester to buy gas and those types of things that, excuse me, that Casey's would be offering. I guess my appeal is common sense. It's obviously something we've needed for a long time. I think that's the only block on South Manorville Avenue that is not commercial at this time, other than the other 2 houses that I own, which I would gladly knock down for some. So I guess that's what I have to say. I know most of the owners that are in agreement are here. Someone pointed at me like, I don't know. He's got something to say, let him talk. I don't know if you have questions for me or the others.
So the rezone request is just for what the site plan that was submitted, it doesn't include the entire block?
Correct.
So-
Casey's does not have an option to purchase all of the property.
Right, but we have the authority to rezone the entire block, not leave a spot zone.
Thank you, Phil.
I'm Jamie Finney. I'm at 401 First Avenue Southwest. So the property that we're talking about is the block directly to the east of me, to my front door. Directly to the north of me is Shopko, which I gave up my park for, and now I'm going to have to look at Casey's. I don't think that's very fair. I mean, I've lived in this house 24 years. Casey's was never brought up for that block in front of me. if people come in the back way, like Phil is stating, they should build down by the school, and people that are coming in the back way can utilize Casey's on that end of the city. So the field that is directly to the west of the high school, I believe that's up for sale, and I believe that is currently commercial. Anybody can tell me?
Actually, that property is not within the city of Casson.
Right directly to the west of the high school?
Are you talking about Shooty?
I don't know who owns the property, but.
Okay, Shooty
LC
property.
Trucking, there's a spot, a strip there, the frontage road is city property, that's only frontage.
North, are you talking north of 16?
I suppose that would be north of 16, isn't it?
Oh.
And then that would not be.
That's residential.
That's, okay.
That's
Because there
residential.
was a big sign that said commercial development land for sale.
That was north of that, yeah.
That's north of that, and that's not in the city limits.
No.
But that would be a better place for it anyway, not in a residential block. And I understand that, you know, they want businesses, you know, close to the 14 overpass, but I'm opposed to looking at Casey's out my front window.
Next thing on the agenda is a conditional use permit. Is there anything we can do potentially? I'm not trying to skip ahead, but is there anything that can be done to make it a little bit more palatable, to strike a balance between residential neighborhood? And maybe we should stay focused on this and get to that, but I guess if you would put some thought into that. Can't hear you, Doug.
Do you want me to, I can answer that. I mean, if, do you want,
Sure.
should I
Sure.
talk about that a little bit?
Well, and I'm jumping around, I'm gonna get myself in trouble.
So
You already are.
Yes
Yeah,
or
thank
no?
you. Thank you. Yeah, shot myself in. That's
The
all.
only thing that I could see that I would be okay with to look at is if there was trees. There are nice pine trees there, a whole, you know, if you can put some more trees there, so I don't have to look at anything. Maybe the back of Casey's, you know, can be there, if you can stipulate that. Put a fence up, but if some trees can be left there, because right now that's a nice shade block as the sun is coming up from the east. So, but otherwise, I would be opposed.
Thank you, and I
Yep.
apologize to everybody.
Can I ask a question?
About the rezone, we should probably stick on
Yeah.
the rezone again,
Well,
please.
yeah, about Casey's. My family owns a franchise of Culver's. My dad does. And there are certain rules and regulations within Culver's that states that it cannot be within a certain amount of distance between the next Culver's. Is that the same thing? Have you guys familiar with any of it? Is that why they're not looking at the other lot that she's proposing?
This is the first time this has been presented to planning and zoning.
No.
Okay, so that might be something to consider, is what's the distance between the two Casey's, the one in Manorville and then the lot that she's looking at.
There's, if you ever go to Zilbrota, there's a Casey's on the north side,
There is.
Casey's on the south side.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an issue here.
Okay, so I'm not aware of the facts in that regards to that. I don't know how they did that in Zimbrota. I actually used to live in Pine Island. And then the other question point I would make in regards to this, like, to play devil's advocate, like, it's great, I love Casey's, I love going to Casey's, my kids love their pizza. They have it delivered to our house, and I suppose I'm the one calling for it. But anyway, a lifetime ago, about 20 years ago, I ran a Section 42, 32 townhome, Section 42 in Farmington, and they were zoning the property in front of us for commercial, and the owner of my property brought up that with that type of a business that's open that late and being off of a highway or a major intersection or coming off with a lot of traffic, it can also bring in a different crowd of people after a certain time. So has the safety been considered in regards to the location of this Casey's for the neighborhood that is behind it or could be behind it? So that would be my other question, is has the safety been looked at in regards to how late this Casey's is open and the neighborhood that is around it? So. those would be things I would consider in regards to Casey's.
Hello, I'm Robert Brown, Manorville. I'm on board of Casey's. I have, my mother owns part of the property that has been, well, temporarily acquired or whatever. I just have a few things. If you look around that neighborhood, there's businesses everywhere. There's Daniels, there's Insurance Across, Shopko. There's gonna be a new building in the Shopko parking lot. And Cassin's growth, you always gotta get new business come into town. And tax revenue from the Casey's alone should be the turning point, just my opinion. And the employment, I don't know if what Casey has in mind, if it's gonna be a 24/7 store, or if they're gonna open up at like 4 a.m. to catch people going to work out on the 4-lane or what, but you've gotta figure there's gonna be at least 40 people maybe employed, which is always nice to have in a town. And I guess that's really all I got to say, is that my opinions on that is that I think it's a very good idea for the rest of Casson to use as a convenience, hence the name convenience store. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jeff Askey again. The question is, how much traffic is gonna be coming in there? You take a look at that, you got the Subway, you got Daniels, Domino's, Shopko, very well done. I thought that, people coming and going, it'd be tough to get in and out, but now you're cramming, and Burger King. You got a lot of traffic coming in there. How are we gonna manage that traffic? Is there gonna be a stoplight at some point? I just think, taking a look at the actual traffic coming in and out at the beginning, of a work day and at the end of the work day, and how far back that Highway 14 gets backed up, and if you have extra traffic, the safety, as well. Just something to consider as you rezone it and take a look at giving them access. How are people getting in and out? And is it gonna be
Yeah.
safe there?
I
right?
believe we did include a comment on a MnDOT, planning review
Okay.
for that.
I didn't see that.
Yes, the engineer has asked for MnDOT planning review. And for the streets department, we've talked about traffic patterns, right turn lanes at the 4th and 5th Street intersections.
Okay.
No parking on the east 125 feet of 4th and 5th Street. And then all the adjacent streets to be chip sealed following construction and streets to be striped. So there will be some additional street consideration there.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
I'll read through that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Amy Costello, Casey's General Store. I'm legal counsel with Casey's. The address is 1 Southeast Convenience Boulevard, Ankeny, Iowa. I'm going to stick just to the rezoning. I know there's been a lot of comments that kind of address more to the CUP, so I'll reserve any comments on that until the next piece. As far as the rezoning goes, I think the question that we look at is whether this is in conformance with the goals and the policies of the city, and my understanding is you just recently passed. The proposed comp plan is now passed, is that correct?
It's been adopted.
Okay, and so this entire, the Mancherville area that we're talking about has been identified through city comments and through the work of this commission and the input from the citizens as an area targeted as a goal to be commercial. I think when you drive through the area, obviously it makes sense that this would be commercial. The changing conditions on this street over time have trended towards commercial. You've got the Burger King across the street, the Shopko to the north, you've got a Subway and the Domino's to the south, various other businesses across the street. So I think we feel very comfortable that this is in conformance with the goals that the city has set, and to stick solely to that rezoning piece and not the actual use. I don't have more to add unless you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
not any additional comments, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Well, you had handed out a few things here before the meeting. Are these items relevant for the topic at hand?
Just a little history on the idea of where Casey's was trying to go back here in 2009, right in between two residential spots, you know, basically referring to the spot zoning. So I'd also like to add ahead of time, before we get too far into this, that Jerry Struthers and his wife have reached out to me as city council and talked to me quite often about this. And I had actually made a phone call for them to Casey's to see if they didn't know if they were in the running on any of this anymore or not, which I did state when whoever I talked to, I can't remember, I apologize if it was one of you guys are here, did state that I was city council right up front, so, which I do not represent Jerry, so. But otherwise, back to your comment there, it was just more of just a little information on the idea of spot zoning, of what the city had handed out years before about not spot zoning, and basically kind of the stuff that we kind of come across just recently with the Images building, trying to change that. So it was just food for thought, because I think Dwayne's kind of the tail end of him being on, and Mayor, I think, was on that stuff, so he kind of remembered some of it when I handed it out to him, but nothing for ammunition for this, or anything, just a little information. Sorry I didn't get it to you sooner. I didn't think about it until today when I was in my office trying to find it here, so.
From my view, with the comp plan, most of the citizens of Casson put input into this comp plan. They deemed this strip a commercial corridor. Everybody knows that it's going to be commercial. I mean, that's a given. It's a given. This thing with Casey's, I think, is a no-brainer. I mean, we are, as the baby boomers are getting that age, you know what I'm talking, Phil. We're all going to be looking for that part-time job. Casey's provides that. I have two 14-year-old granddaughters that are going to be looking for part-time jobs. I think the more we get into this, the more variety we have, just besides just a Quick Trip, which I think is great, but I think having the Casey's in town is just a plus for the city, all the way around. Work, convenience, another avenue to get fuel, and most of the traffic, I think, will be in the morning. It's on the right side, heading out of town. If we get, and when, we get 16th Street paved all the way to the county road, that's going to alleviate a lot of traffic coming down 57. I think the plans are in the works to get this covered. It will be a nice fit, a perfect fit. I don't see anything wrong with it at all. None whatsoever. And as far as spot zoning go, I think that whole block needs to be rezoned. The entire block. That's my view.
Just for a point of clarification, that means the one residential will be a non-conforming use if we do that.
Now, I assume in doing that, his ability to make any modifications to that.
It's done.
How do you plan on financing it?
Finance it.
If they want to sell it, who's going to finance a home?
That's not the city's business.
It was on down in my end of town, and the citizens came to everybody and said, we can't get our houses refinanced because we're zoned commercial. And out to South Fork out here, we had to rezone that because they couldn't get financing to do property purchases out there. It is actually your problem if you want to rezone their livelihood.
Were you given the opportunity to sell, Jerry?
Just once. They never came back with another offer.
But you were given the opportunity to sell.
But it wasn't enough I could build a house with it or either. and I gotta have a handicapped house.
But I don't really think that is the issue at hand here. We're talking about rezone here, that what the rezone is gonna cost. I don't have any problem with a no-brainer for Casey to be in here, great for Casson, a perfect fit. Or if in my retirement, he's doing a good job there. I agree 100% with Lonnie on that. It's a convenience store in this town, it would be a good fit, but, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the rezone here, and then what we're gonna be doing to the zoning ordinance here. And I've talked to several people, and you're not spot zoning, but you're reverse spot zoning.
But we're staying with the comp plan.
The comp plan is a pipe dream that somebody dreamed up that can change with the next go-around.
It seems to be working out rather well.
It just started, right? So how's it working?
It's working great.
You're doing great, Lonnie.
Yep.
It's, like I said before, I mean, we've got election year coming up, we have 3 new people in here, and they say, well, we don't wanna go this direction, we need to do another comp plan. It's just a direction that you adopt to try to go that way, and I'm not saying that that lot's not a perfect spot for it. I'm not denying that from anybody. What I'm saying is that, your comp plan might do that, but you're just gonna throw out the whole idea of what the city councils before us have said, not spot zoning. I mean, and if you're gonna do this and rezone his property to turn him into non-conforming, that kinda goes against about everything that we do. When somebody wants to build a garage that fell down, and they wanna go bigger, and we don't allow that, because that's not conforming. We'll let them put it on a slab that stayed in that same footprint, and that is not conforming, because they haven't expanded anything. So, I am not willing to rezone this and have one section, knowing the people or somebody I don't like, and have them basically put out and bear the burden of, I have no idea of what it's gonna do to their property value. I have talked to some realtors, and they all have said it will drastically affect their property value. Now, you wanna rezone it C2, good luck.
It could increase the price of their lot.
If they were to find somebody who could come in and put a building on that small lot.
But it could. It could increase it
You
just
wanna
as
play
well as
devil's
it could.
advocate, I'm fine with that.
But you're saying the same thing, you have a
Yeah,
reverse
I
direction.
had actually talked to realtors that do the comps, so I do have a little bit of backing behind it. I'm not gonna get into a big pissing match on this, but what I'm saying is that you were all more than willing to make sure we made the right moves on the rezone uptown here. I'm not saying that Casey's doesn't belong here, that it's not a good fit. Any convenience store for competition, yes. But to basically make the call, I mean, it could be the other end. They could've went to Phil Johnson and said, we don't want your lot on that end, but we'll take these other ones. I mean.
They did that, they need more room.
The idea is that, I guess, I wouldn't go down that road as a city of rezoning somebody's residential property into a C2 district and just wait for the papers to come in the mail.
Can we still talk?
No. The idea that, I mean, when I talked to a couple of people when they first came out there, and if I remember right, and I could be wrong, I'm sure Casey will tell me, but I do believe, talking to the Millers over breakfast one time, that what they wanted for their properties was so outlandish that Casey just walked away. So, and I kinda told him that, 'cause you guys gotta have an idea, a little bit around the reality that you're not gonna get $550,000 or $750,000 for that lot there just because of what it was. But I think, the idea of them, they're gonna sell their lot. It's gonna be, sorry, Jim, it is gonna become a commercial lot. It is, that's what everybody wants to see. It could be who knows, a restaurant go in there. But what I'm saying is that I think to do our due diligence in here, we need to either at least look at this a little bit more, or, like I said, I'm not willing to rezone this and leave somebody in that little island there in spot zone. I won't spot zone. And I won't rezone the whole block, because I'm not gonna put the city at that type of risk of having that come back to haunt us.
I hear what you're saying, but I've got a completely different opinion. I think the whole block needs to be done, and to be compliant with the comprehensive plan. That we spent months and got city input from citizens. So, I hear what you're saying, I respect the position you're taking. I'm just not on the same path as you.
No, Dwayne, I do agree with you. I think that whole city block needs to be C2 all at the same time, but I can't see doing that while there's still a resident still sitting in there.
What resources does the city have to address that?
The rezoning?
No.
Or the...
You've got a sole residential homeowner here. What resources does the city have to relocate this gentleman to whatever standard he is set for?
I'm sorry, to relocate?
I have no idea. I mean...
Oh, yeah, no.
Basically,
the city
that's
step in and
buying his lot.
Yeah.
No.
Like you did
Well,
with the Zomax when the park went, or when the shop
Yes.
went in.
There's a different city council now.
But it has happened in fact.
Right.
So the city wouldn't be interested in getting involved in buying the shop? We don't know. We've got two representatives here, and there's nothing.
And I know.
Yeah, that has not been discussed by city council, and it would initially be discussed in a closed meeting.
Could I ask the Casey's attorney a question, or is it too late? Can I ask you if you would be willing to talk to Struthers again?
I don't have the authority to further offer on the
Okay.
site. What I can say is that in Casey's opinion, and I think it's in the record from the other sellers, that Casey's was reasonable in the offers that we made and negotiated in good faith with all the other sellers on the block. We made what we believe to be a very reasonable offer. It was rejected and counteroffered with what we believe to be a very unreasonable number. We've stuck with our offer, and it was rejected. So to the extent that we selected a home and said we don't want this one, that's just to clear the record, that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
And it wasn't stating that they said we didn't want this one. The gentleman said that they figured out a plan that they can go around them without it. So it wasn't that, to state that. But I just, like I said, I have a tough time looking at it this way. And I guess I'll throw it out there because I threw it out there before. How about in your neighborhood?
I'm good.
You're good with somebody turning your lot into a C2 district?
Absolutely. I'd move on. For the better of the city, for the city as a whole.
And then when you go to sell your house and no one can get financing for residents in a C2 district, you're perfectly fine with that.
You have to look at it too, as the point, are we doing this for the good of the city as a whole?
Well, I guess, yeah, you could sacrifice somebody, I suppose.
I like your word. But we're still doing this, we should be doing this for the good of the city as a whole.
And we are. I mean, we went through and did a very good job on the comp plan. I think the citizens did a great job on the comp plan. And like I said, I don't disagree, and I have to apologize to Jamie because she's in that area of the town that will hopefully someday be consumed the whole area. Maybe she'll get the luck of the draw and be able to sell her house as a commercial property. Who knows? Maybe I will. Who knows? But we're dealing with what we have right here now, and like I said, I'm not in favor of the city rezoning somebody's property. I think that will open up a whole can of issues possibly with lawyers, which we don't need to go down that road. And I am not in favor of reverse spot zoning this stuff. I mean, if it all's gotta go, maybe we gotta find a developer that's gonna buy it all. I mean, it said it before when sat right there over there. Shopko didn't like the way, where we wanted to put them, go find Walmart, go find Target. It's, you know, our city.
You're still gonna have traffic problem in this town, you know.
Ron, we're,
No,
we're.
We'll be able
let's
to
stick
take comment in the
yeah.
next public hearing, in the next public hearing.
What absolutely haunts me about Shopko is that the planning and zoning board turned that thing down. They went to city council, and as opposed to the city council looking at some sort of balanced plan as to how to make Shopko and the community work together, they just really approved Shopko with, I don't think, a lot of meaningful conditions to strike that balance.
They actually took the planning commission recommendation right off the agenda, never heard it.
And again, I'm not trying to relive that, but it's things like that that haunt me to this day. So if you turn this down, then it goes back to city council, and they turn around and approve it, you're really taking us out of the equation, in our experience sitting here, our experience listening to people, our experience working on this kind of project. You know, I don't want to see this gentleman on an island by himself.
To move this forward and to try to work our way out of the weeds, I'm gonna make a motion to approve, the rezone to C2 that encompasses the entire block. I'll put the motion out and see whether there's a second and we can vote on it.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and we have a second.
We can have further discussion now, but the motion's out there.
Are there any additional thoughts?
What were some of the other conversations and comments that happened with Zomox when Shopko was, what were the conversations that happened here?
Specific to them?
With this board. I understand the outcome and the council's movement, but
it was only you and I that were.
Well, we didn't have anything with really any conversation on it because, as you know, it was still R1. So there was nothing really to do with Zomac besides city council purchasing the property. So, and yeah, we dealt with the zoning change here, a month ago, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I did come across this back then. The only one really involved Casey's with across from, you know, Quonset is up there, the bus barns, across there, in between the two residential houses out there, so.
Still have a motion and a second. Are there any more thoughts?
Yes, I have a little bit of difficulty I understand the concept of reverse spot zoning, but I do have some difficulty of lumping that property into the rezone. I think the underlying zoning would be C2. You know, I don't have a problem with that. The concern I have is rezoning someone's property whose property is not necessarily on the agenda we're considering tonight. I would think that if that needed to be rezoned for every one of the whole block, that could come back as a separate item at a subsequent meeting, that the city would take on its own initiative to rezone as a C2, but to bring that in with this one when that's not part of the request, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't think you're restricted to have it be part of the request to act on it. Because you've got you've got a larger percentage of the entire block.
Mm-hmm.
And by zoning it, you've got C2 to the north, this would be C2 to the south. You've created a residential spot zone, which is against our ordinance.
Do you have any obligation though to the property owner that says outside of surprise, surprise, you're coming to a planning and zoning meeting, we're gonna rezone your property plan?
Not as long as you're making your action contingent with the comp plan that was just adopted.
The comp plan isn't gonna give you a coverall.
Gives you the direction.
It gives you the direction, and you're supposed to go by that direction.
Right.
But it's not gonna go, and you go in front of the judge and say, well, our comp plan says this. You adopted that, well, not necessarily. I mean, that's not your blanket.
So what we have is we got the motion. If we get the majority to agree, then we're done and on. If it fails, there can be a second motion to come.
Push it forward, then we've got a motion on
I have a question first.
Please.
Could you tell me how your offer, how was that presented to you, and we can't discuss it?
No.
But there was an offer. Okay, I can.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I think I've got to oppose it as well, so forgive me. You have 4-3?
Needs to be Spears, Borgstrom, and Tinsley.
Hmm?
Correct?
Yeah, I heard you.
Spears, Borgstrom, and Tinsley are names.
For all names. With that said, the motion passes.
Next item on the agenda, public hearing, Casey's Retail Company, conditional use permit.
An automobile service station is a conditional use within the C2 zone. We did a pretty comprehensive staff planning review of the site plan that was presented to us. We do hope to work further with Casey's on the site plan as it moves forward. I did not specifically include a buffer between Casey's and the properties to the west. You could certainly add that to the staff recommendations for buffer yards. Did you have any specific questions maybe about things that were included or anything on that review?
I'll just go on record before we open the public hearing. I'm not comfortable approving any conditional use permit tonight with all of the items on the staff review and not having a MnDOT review and report, because I'm really concerned about the congestion on Fifth Street. And we were just gonna add to that, and I think some serious consideration needs to be made to the ingress and egress on Fifth. So I'm just not ready to act on a conditional use permit tonight, regardless of what comes out of the public hearing.
And I have a tough time because they don't actually own the property yet, and I think we've got the cart in front of the horse until this is signed, sealed, delivered by city council and our other previous.
The reason.
I'd prefer to table this.
Doesn't some insight into a conditional use permit, Owen plan forward, offer city council some benefit in terms of what this is gonna look like?
So we did publish a public hearing. We should hear the public.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
With that said, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If you have any thoughts to share on the conditional use permit, if you'd be kind enough to come up to the podium.
I'm Jamie Finney, 401 First Avenue Southwest. So when Shopko went in and they stated that because there's a street there that they did not require any buffers. So they did plant, little seedling trees. So off to my deck, I see white wall. beautiful. You know, it's very relaxing out there on the deck and look at a white wall. I don't want that to happen when I look out my front window. I would like to see nice trees, big trees, trees that I'm used to looking at, or a nice fence. I would prefer no more traffic in front of my avenue. There's only 2 residents that come out onto that avenue now. Shopko, you know, people are turning off by Domino's and coming down our street to get into Shopko. I believe that, you know, everybody was supposed to come down to 4th and go into the Shopko lot, but that's not happening. So I'm getting traffic, and with Casey's, there's, you know, gonna be more traffic. Not sure if you can, you know, cut, you know, one of the intersections off, so people can't get down there, but me and my neighbor can get out one way or the other. I don't care. I mean, that would control the traffic away from my avenue in front of me. I'm really concerned about the traffic on Manorville Avenue. If you put Casey's right there off of it, I already have an issue coming off of 14 and making a left in the evening. Sometimes we're sitting there and, you know, we're like 15 minutes out with the traffic because there's a 4-way stop, you know, up by Quick Trip and the parking lot up there. So what I see a lot of people doing is they're coming off of the exit ramp, they're making a right and doing a U-turn in order to get into town. So that can be a, you know, huge safety issue. So something has to be done about the traffic anyway. So, and then the other, you know, contingency is if you are gonna pass Casey's going into that lot, yeah, it would be nice to keep the traffic, you know, away from us. You know, make some nice barriers, not just little seedlings there, fence, you know, whatever. That's all I got to say.
Any other comments?
Good evening, my name is Jared Sargent, 1 Convenience Boulevard, Ankeny, Iowa. I am the one that you spoke to when you called. I am the real estate associate for Casey's. I go out and pick out the real estate and then I negotiate the real estate contracts on behalf of Casey's. In this particular case, we had Mr. George Baird, who was our realtor and has had the direct contact, so I have not had the direct contact with the sellers. In regards to Mr. Streller's property, we could not come to an agreement based solely on price. In regards to the question that was presented earlier, if we would entertain an offer, we would receive any offer from Mr. Streller's for the record. Amy and myself could take that back to the executives that make that decision at that time. The gal asked about the hours of operation earlier. Generally, our new stores are open from 5 a.m. to 11 or 12 at night. Our operations team says that we do not know what they would be at this location at this time. And then, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Jamie.
Jamie, in order to alleviate the concerns about the buffer zone between the actual back of the store and then what she would see from her yard or her neighbors, we would be in agreement with both trees. Generally, and our engineer can speak to this, generally we do, I think, spruce trees, I'm not sure. But we would also consider doing a 6-foot wood privacy fence if you guys entertain that in whatever motion at whatever time. I think that from our perspective, the location in town that we have chosen is the highest traffic count that we can get. This is the only location in town that makes sense for us, is somewhere along that South Manorville Avenue corridor. I don't see any other properties this size becoming available to us. So for what that's worth, I don't think it's worth our time to go out north or on the east or on the west side of town.
this is pretty much it for us. So with that, I will take any questions, comments, or concerns, and then go from there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good with that?
Does anybody else have any comments?
Jerry, maybe I take the microphone. Say,
Jerry Struthers, 12 Southwest 4th Street in Canson. I want to let you know, at least Casey's came back with his one offer, and that was the only one they ever came back. They never came back and talked to us again. They just said we could build around it, and that was all they wanted. And that's what's so far, that nobody's heard anything else about it. And you will develop my house when I change to zone.
Yeah, what I can do is, I can't speak to the specifics of the real estate transactions, especially out of respect for the other 5 properties that are on the block. But one of the issues that's important to this case is the timing of the selling as well as the price. The price was so far off that we couldn't come to an agreement, but also the timing. We have 5 lots with 4 different sellers that want to sell now, and we also have a seller that wants to wait and sell. So we do have an issue both on the price and on the timing, and from our position, it was right to get the agreement in place with the 5 lots, the 4 owners that want to do it now.
I guess I got another statement about it. I think it's probably about the spot zoning. If you're on Manorville Avenue and there's a insurance company there, there's a little house there with a garage. That was my aunt's house, and Burger King is right next door. They wanted that property, they weren't willing to sell, and I believe the zoning has been changed on that house to commercial. You can't sell it as a house, you gotta sell it as a property, and somebody had to come in and bulldoze it down. So that's, he was saying he didn't like that idea, but it's happened before right across the street, and it was to my aunt. So, thank you.
Anything you'd like to share? No, I'm not trying to bully you.
Tanae McMurchie. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's easier to hear you. Okay.
We're being recorded.
Tanae McMurchie, 905 7th Street, Northwest Castle. Basically, what I would like to say is that I feel that Struthers had their chance. The rest of us on the block made the decision, and now he's probably regretting it, of course, but it shouldn't affect the rest of us. Thank you.
Amy Costello again for Casey's. I just wanted to speak real quickly to some of the other factors that you guys consider on a conditional use permit. I think Jared hit on a lot of them. Just to lead off on the concerns regarding traffic and the acceptance of the rezoning by the City Council. In order to keep this moving, Casey's would be willing to have that as a further contingency, that this an approval that was contingent upon a satisfactory review from MnDOT and the city engineer, and also obviously the CUP would be a moot point if the rezoning is not approved, so contingent on that as well. Again, time is a factor here, but that's just one suggestion. Regarding whether or not the structure of the site will have an adverse effect on the adjacent residential properties, I think when you look at the neighborhood in question, we've kind of discussed this to a degree earlier in the evening. This wouldn't be a significant change either to the character or the look of the building, a significant change to the area. There are already quite a few commercial properties of various looks and styles and construction. I think Casey's is willing to work with the city on the finishes to make sure that you are satisfied with the final look of the store. But I'm very comfortable saying that, you know, we are going to build a quality product that's important for Casey's. It's important for us to be a good neighbor to the communities that we're in, and so we're happy to take care of those issues and work with the city to the extent that we can modify the final touches on the building to make it more consistent with what you're looking for the city as a whole. We've discussed the landscaping and the buffering. We're willing to consider all reasonable buffering that we can do on, around the residential property that would be on the block. And as far as, you know, additional buffering behind, if that's something that's requested. We do feel that this meets the overall needs of the city. This is, again, a commercial corridor. Your comprehensive plan indicated that over 80% of the people who work in the city are automobile commuters. We're offering a service that's needed in the community, as attested to by citizens and also just our counts. I mean, we certainly don't want to go into a market that's already oversaturated. We're looking for markets that need us. I mean, that's a good business model for us, and makes us, again, a good neighbor to the community, providing a service that the community needs. This use is consistent with the purpose of the ordinance, as it's a permitted conditional use under the ordinance. It's not in conflict with the comprehensive plan, as already been discussed. We don't see that there would be any impediment of the normal and orderly development of the surrounding property. Most of the property around it is already developed. This isn't a new area. And as far as the concerns with having one parcel that's not zoned commercial, or whether it gets zoned commercial, that question, I think that's very common that you see that in transitioning areas where a city makes the decision to take a corridor and change that into a commercial corridor. And it's naturally been doing that over time, and now you guys have just solidified that. I think it's not a atypical thing that we see. So I think that has a way of working itself out. We don't feel that this would prohibit that. As far as further discussions on any other pieces, as far as the traffic, or we can speak to that if there are additional questions. Thanks.
If there's not any additional comments, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you all.
Got one question, does street committee still exist?
Street? No, no. We met with, Charlie and Brandon regarding the street.
Well, like I said before, anybody does discuss it, I think that I'd like to see us table this, get the public hearing covered. See what the next course gets taken out of it at the city council level. And like Dwayne said, get some of these other people involved and get their input in here.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about the traffic and potential traffic patterns, and I think some effort needs to be put into figuring that out with the help of MnDOT. And that just doesn't happen overnight. I suspect it's gonna take a month to get some idea as to where that's gonna go. So tabling it till the next meeting, I'm not opposed to. I agree with everything as far as the buffering and all of that, and I like the layouts that's been presented. I just have a real issue with the traffic, and I wanna get that, make sure that we've put our due diligence in addressing that, out of concern of the safety concerns, where that traffic may go. You know, will it go to First Avenue? What's the potential? And until we get those answered, I'm just uncomfortable moving forward with the conditional use permit.
And I could see there being additional traffic coming off Highway 14 to fill their tank, grab something to eat and drink, and then get back on Highway 14.
Yeah.
I don't know what MnDOT's honestly gonna tell you, and I'm concerned that any.
Well, if they don't tell us anything, at least that's more than what we've got right now. We just don't know.
Forgive my memory, Teresa, but are we on a specific timeline when we need to respond to a conditional use permit?
Yes, you are. 60 days.
Which is fine, I mean, we've got 2 city council meetings in between the next one.
You're almost implying, Coy, if the city turns down the rezone, there's almost no reason to have a conversation about a conditional use permit.
Well, there's really, yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, and conditional use permit, is filed by the owner of the property. Right? They don't own it yet.
Well, I'll just remind everybody, we're a recommending body,
Yeah,
so
not-
so the council can act on what we approve tonight on the rezone, or change the rezone.
Right. So, yeah, it's not cut in stone with
Right.
anything,
Okay. Let's table the conditional use permit to the next planning and zoning. That way the city council has time to pass the rezone, get
May-
that passed,
Sorry.
and then we move on.
May I consider that a motion?
I make a motion that we table the conditional use permit to the next planning and zoning.
Linda, are we fine time-wise?
Yes.
This was, what if we moved the meeting?
If we move the meeting to the end of August, I think that goes past the 60 days.
This was 6/13 was the date on this
Yep.
application.
So if you move the planning commission meeting back, you're gonna be over the 60 days.
Just keep the planning commission meeting where it's normal date.
We can, but we'll talk about that next. Yeah. We'll have to figure out time to sit down and discuss those things and be very conscious of the timeline, I think. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I got just something to add. I have a bit of a concern with, when we're going through the CUP, there are certain parameters that we have to meet, certain conditions. And the one that I think might be a sticking point is, found in 154.029B2 or L, which is that the proposed use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood, and will not significantly diminish or impair the values of the property. I think, one piece that's kind of sitting out there, that so-called island, I think, it'd be hard to argue that their property value is not being impaired. So I think if this was a full block, some of these other concerns could be mitigated.
Maybe we can encourage our city council members to bring that up during their discussion. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Okay.
Any other comments? We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Additional use permit is tabled. Other business, I believe, Teresa, you are out on the, forgive me, the 12th?
August 13th, and the following day is the primary election. So those were a couple of staff notes, but then also if this needs to get to council by August 13th.
So it would actually be the 11th.
By
There are
August.
31 days in both July and,
Yeah.
but June, so just.
So you would actually have to have another, yeah, how will that work out? How would the council?
The council meeting's on the 8th of August.
So we could schedule something on the 6th in theory and meet everybody's time frame?
Oh, 6th, and go to council on the 8th?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you'd make it in time.
Okay.
Does that work into everybody's schedule? Yes?
Sorry, what was it?
August 6th, we can only schedule the next planning and zoning meeting on the 6th.
Yep.
Works for me.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
And something I brought up in the last meeting, I sent everybody a little bit of follow-up information here over the course of the weekend, when I was thinking Saturday night. We issued Mr. Jason Wilker a conditional use permit in 2010. And I guess making sure that he is complying with that conditional use permit, I went out and toured his property, and I think I have some concerns. And I don't know, I guess my immediate thought would be to see if anybody agreed with me on some of these concerns. If anybody has any questions questions. I'm hoping perhaps somebody went out there and took a look around. If there is any agreement, any conversation on it, I guess my thoughts were perhaps to write him a letter from the city and encourage him to bring his property into compliance.
Well, that would have to be an action from city council to recommend that, so. Looking for a motion?
Motion.
To recommend it?
Recommend a letter?
Yeah, the city council have to create that action, not us. Not saying we can't, I mean, we're only recommend the body.
Before we jump to that, do we have a basis to make that recommendation?
Yeah, I agree there are a number of issues that he's not complying on. I think we need to have a demonstrable action that we've at least given him the opportunity to bring it in compliance before we consider revocation.
Agreed.
Agreed. So, city council will entertain writing a letter to Mr. Wilker. Guess I'm looking for a motion for somebody.
Well, just, not that I disagree, but I think it brings up a bigger issue with the fact that we have no follow-up, we issue these conditional use permits, and in this case, it was 8 years ago, or whatever it was. And he's clearly, been in violation of this for quite some time. And I don't disagree with the fact that we need to inform him of that officially from the city. But we have no official follow-up. We have no, who, do we need to get something stated that, whether it's an annual basis or every couple of years that these conditional use permits are coming back to us to review, or city administrator to review.
Yeah, I don't know the scope of the city's resources to do that, and I guess I'm quite happy. It took me 10 minutes. Bear in mind, that property's a few blocks away. I'm happy to jump in a vehicle with my camera, take a few photos. Do we have the conversation at this level?
In the past, it's been if you have something that you want to be brought to the attention, you bring it up to.
It's been if somebody complains.
Yeah, so it basically it's city that polices itself, and then we have in the past brought it up to our planning and zoning administrator, and that person, I believe, Brandon Buster, is that your planning and zoning?
I'm the interim zoning
So-
administrator.
And in the past, I've talked with Mike Martin on some issues, and he's literally drove out to the residents and talked to them. He was pretty good about doing that. That's kind of was the protocol before. So yeah, it's something that more, if a resident brings it up to you, you bring it up to staff or city council or here or whatever. And that was kind of what we've done. Nothing formal besides the planning and zoning administrator did discussion with the property owner. That helps.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had some kind of
protocol,
or if that's, I realize that a lot of those get handled case by case on a complaint basis, and, but in a situation like this one, where he's out of compliance for so long, and because of the locale, there's not a whole lot of people that are gonna complain about that, just because of his location in town.
And the only reason it popped up on my radar screen was because of his recent request for a conditional use permit, and hiring an attorney to come up here, and it didn't smell right. In the scope of there's only 24 hours in a day, and you've got multiple responsibilities, I don't know.
Well, Mr. Wilker and his attorney were both aware of the information that you had in your packets for those 2 meetings that clearly laid out the ways in which he was not in compliance with his conditional use permit. So it's not a surprise to either he or his attorney that that's the case. I can address that to him more formally if that would be your preference. I'm happy to do that.
Move that the council direct our city administrator to generate such a letter.
And
again, I know, I'm not trying to disregard policy and procedure, but there's 24 hours in a day, you've got multiple
No, I-
responsibilities. I mean,
Well, the work's pretty much done. I mean, I did the work for your packet before, so the
I
work's
guess
pretty much done.
tapping at least myself, I won't speak for the gentleman around the table, to wander out there and take a few, I guess I don't have a problem getting.
Okay, okay.
Assuming it's appropriate and it makes life easier as opposed to harder.
People call me about dirt piles.
Any other business anybody would like to discuss?
We need a second. Dwayne made the motion.
Forgive me, ma'am, thank you, we've got a motion. Can you restate it for me, sir, please?
To have the council direct the city administrator to generate a letter to Mr. Wilker regarding his non-compliance.
To the 2010 condition. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion is a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Michael. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
If there's nothing else to discuss, gentlemen, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
When we get into an HR issue here.
My battery's never